Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult video 184, Missing 411, a series by David Paulides. I did get one of the editions of it. I have skimmed through a few others, and I think it's interesting now. First and foremost, getting this out of the way. I am aware of the fact that some individuals don't like his work because they're like, well, Art Bell, I think that one time was sort of questioning part of it, questioning the methodology of data gathering, I believe. I will say this though, if you read it the way you're supposed to read it, it's very interesting. There are two important aspects of this that I would say. Now, first and foremost, as far as is he talking about Sasquatch or UFOs or whatever, leave that aside. You can have that debate separately. And Paulides himself goes to great lengths to not say what he believes is accounting for these various missing persons reports. There are two important reasons why I like the work. Number one, as far as I know, Paulides has managed to, I think he's on volume 6 now, and probably going to write more. He has compiled a massive list of what amount to very strange missing persons report. That is, that he has compiled in one set of books thousands and thousands of cases that have been unexplained of people missing under odd circumstances that conform. The basic point is that these missing persons cases conform to a certain number of criteria, or at least some of the following. For instance, the body is found in an area where that had been thoroughly searched before, to the point at which it begs an explanation as to how the body got there, because it appears to have been put there after the fact. Because if you have an area, it's like one of the cases in one of these editions is literally they found the body draped over a log along a trail they had already gone down once. That is, that in the span of time that the searchers traveled down the trail and back again, the body was placed on this log. It would have been physically impossible for them to miss it. This appears to point towards some sort of intelligent force. Animals, of course, they don't not predate on the body and then drape it across the log and walk off. That is, you're talking about a human or maybe a Sasquatch, extraterrestrial, something along those lines. But there are certain criteria. Bad weather, in many cases, is mentioned. The age of the victim is small children, people with developmental disabilities, and so forth. And he points out at multiple points, I think he's doing this as a cautionary tale, that he's never come across a single account where a person had both a firearm and a transponder, and actually been one of the victims here. Now, of course, some case could emerge, but I think he's warning people, hey, if you're wandering off out in the woods, might be inclement weather coming, you might be alone, you probably should have a firearm, and that's self-explanatory, or some good weapon of some kind, a broadsword, a crossbow, something like that, and a transponder, because if you do fall off a ledge and roll down into a gully for 100 feet, you might not get found. But if you get the transponder on, of course, they probably can find you. The other part of this is if you're reading it for the creepy factor. Anytime you're reading about unsolved sort of mysterious stuff, it's a little bit spine tingling. But when you're talking about this specific set of criteria that he has created for these cases, where someone goes out hiking in a national wildlife refuge, never comes back, they search for a week, they search every square inch of the area, never find him, and then all of a sudden the body just magically appears on a log or something. Or in cases where, 20 years later they found a skeleton positively identified and it was in a position that appears to have been deliberate wrongful death, and they never found it despite the fact that they were in the area, and it's really mysterious. And he talks about berries being involved and also outcroppings of rock, which by the way ties in at least loosely. I don't know if he is aware of this, but the concept of the hidden folk, in fairy lore, actually has an overlap with this, which is another reason why this is an occult video. When you read it like that, it's basically creepypasta. But it's real. That's the reason why it's creepier. Is when you're titillating yourself, it's a Halloween night and it's spooky and there's leaves rustling and a gentle rain falling and a warm mist rising up out of the soil and there's zombies outside because kids come and get candy and throw eggs at your house. And you're reading this, you might lose a little bit of sleep. In all honesty, there are reports from Vermont and the one that I've got here. And it's a little bit weird. And I know he talked in his original edition, which was years ago, about Glastonbury, about Bennington the Bennington Triangle, and how there's a cluster of disappearances actually there. Now, if you look at the actual history behind the folklore, it's a little bit less mysterious, but when you have that large number of people in the general span of one area disappear without a trace in a relatively short, as far as humans go, span of time, disappearances are common, but disappearances without a recovery of either a body or a living person, not as common. They're fairly scant, and yet you have these areas, these clusters where they're abnormally high. In the case of something like Glastonbury Mountain, it's not a major tourist attraction. It's not like you have it's not like Yellowstone or something like that. Okay, let's put it that way. And you have a cluster of 7 strange disappearances in the area over the course of a century. That's abnormally high, especially for an area that's rural, that's sparsely populated. Bennington is the only significant settlement for like 20 miles around. It's like Manchester a little bit. You have to go, I think, 30 miles to the east in order to get to Brattleboro. And yet this one very small area has a lot of disappearances. I've actually touched on that in an Occult video. I think Missing 411 is highly fascinating. As far as you've got to understand, some of the cases, in my opinion, he shouldn't have included because they only include like 1 or 2 criteria. It's like, oh, well, this person disappeared and then there was a bad storm and they didn't recover a body. Well, that's only 2 of your criteria. If it begins to crawl upwards so that you have everything aligning in this general set of genres, more or less, for hundreds and hundreds of cases, it becomes a little bit more weird. I think the most chilling, honestly, are those where the body magically appears in an area that's already searched. That is the most interesting thing that he writes about. And that's included in at least half of these cases. It's an astonishing number. And it defies logic. It defies explanation. If searchers, people who know what they're doing, they've got air cover, they've got dogs, the dogs can't pick up a scent in an area, and then the body turns out to be in the area that was searched. Are the dogs like totally fucked up? There should have been a scent there, and yet they don't find anything. The humans are there, they don't see anything. They're looking from the sky, they get no signature for a dead body, like decomposing in a swamp or something. It's a very, very strange sort of core of material. I'm enjoying it very much. I plan to get the rest of the volumes of it. And again, of course, some of the cases, it's a little bit of a stretch, but they do conform to some, at least, of these criteria. That's about all. Peace out.